Oh my god! What is that? Hello? Oh my god. It's you.
How are you here? I don't even know where here is, let alone how I got here. Are you real? Are you? I'm not so sure anymore, but it's nice to finally meet you in person, I guess. Likewise. How about we just try to make the most of it, yeah? Sure, how? Welcome, friends, to the very special first episode of the Tales of Tumiun podcast. Tales of Tumiun, of course, stands for travelers and lore keepers escaping stories of fiction to undergo magical interviews, unraveling narratives. Today we are joined by the most notable guest star of this channel, the storyteller, the map maker, and the author of the Cartographer's Tome of Tumiun, a guide to the wild world. Kickstarter launches March 31st. Link is in the description. Himself. It's the Cartographer. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. The pleasure is all mine, I suppose. Now, Mr. Cartographer, over just Cartographer will do fine, thank you. Of course. Cartographer, over the years we've had a lot of questions for you from our lovely audience, and I was wondering if you might like to answer some of them now that you're here. Oh, well, yes, absolutely. I'd love to. Ask away. Perfect. Let's dive in, shall we? Yes, let us. Now, this first question is one I think we're all very curious about. Darksaber8611 and Perlanera3402 ask, what do you believe is beyond the walls of the world? Well, that truly is the great ultimate question, isn't it? I can understand why you'd want to ask that first. But I can honestly say I have no idea. I have stood at the feet of those insurmountable cliffs in the shadow of their grandeur, and it left me with more questions than answers. I have heard all the theories, that the walls are a prison made by some ancient people or beings meant to keep us in, or that they are a shield meant to keep something far worse out. The Delvers say their god Uzdu, lord of the stone giants, tore open the world when he was birthed from the earth, and we still live in that pit. Hanshitano, one of the many legendary explorers who tried to climb them, was convinced of a paradise waiting on the other side. But the truth? I suspect it's something far simpler. The Silliman scholars believe Tumiun to be only a small part of a large orb, a planet, and our encircled world may have been formed when a great something hit that orb, like a rock making a crater in the sand. That would mean that up there, beyond the great girdle, there's just more world, barren perhaps, or full of life. Another land, another sea, under the same sun and stars, but one we are, for now, not meant to know. It is the final blank space on any map, and perhaps it is meant to remain so, to keep a little mystery, a little wonder, in a world so often eager to chart every last stone. Wow. Yep, great answer. So you don't personally have any strange theories or obscure myths that you believe in? Well, I did always like the Aiuo tale that Tumiun is the hollowed-out heart of a truly gigantic tree stump, and the walls of the world are the petrified bark still standing up along the edges. Whoa. But I don't believe it to be true or anything. No, got it. That would be weird, right? Now, what I've always wondered is, how tall are the walls really? I've heard you describe them as infinite in your tales, but that can't be true, right? Well, there is some debate there, but no, they do not seem to be infinitely tall. When I describe them as infinite, I mean that they encircle my world without end. Right. A circle is, in a way, infinite, but estimations of their height have varied greatly throughout the ages. By my own personal calculations, based on the Silliman's numbers of the curvature of the planet and the distance from which the tops of the walls become visible on the horizon, I estimate them to be between 8 miles tall at their lowest and about 14 miles high at their tallest. 14 miles? You calculated that yourself? I did, yes. Though it should be noted that they are not straight cliffs all the way up. Most have plateaus, like the steps of a staircase, and they grow gradually less steep. But yes, their tops seem to be around 10 or 11 miles high on average. Mathematics is one of the many tools a cartographer needs to master to really understand how the world around him looks on a map. I guess that makes sense. Incredible. Now, speaking of your skills, I'm not alone in wondering who your mentor was. My dear friend Gekebeer.
Bless you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. He asks, who taught you? I mostly taught myself, actually, through lots and lots of trial and even more error. Sometimes I do wish I'd have had a mentor, but for a free adventurer like me, it's hard to find a teacher. You know what would have been perfect for you? No? The sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. It's an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative and curious people. Honestly, if you had this back in Tumiun, you could have saved yourself years of trial and error.
So, an online learning community, like a guild of sages, but in the ether?
Exactly. In fact, bringing you into this studio today required me to learn some new magic of my own, which is why I took Jordi Vandeput's class on masking in Premiere Pro. It taught me everything I needed to know about how to use the masking tool to seamlessly clone myself on screen, allowing me to unlock this whole new level of storytelling through good old-fashioned movie magic.
Very intriguing. Wait, what do you mean cloning?
Let's not think about it too hard. The point is, Skillshare has creative classes taught by world-class creatives, like professional illustrators, renowned photographers, and successful entrepreneurs. It is the best place to learn a creative skill or pick up a new hobby. So if you're looking to reconnect with your creativity, Skillshare is the place for you. And the best part? The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today.
Well, that is generous. Though I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about this movie magic.
Fair. Would it make you feel better if we continued with some more of those great questions from the audience?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Now, let's move away from the edge of Tumiun and talk a bit about the different realms. Bismore Gaming and Carina M. Polman ask, how connected are the continents? How diverse do they feel? And how much travel or migration is happening?
Some really good questions there. I think I'll start with the diversity of the lands, because there's a lot to talk about there already.
Sounds good.
The continents are truly as diverse as can be in terms of landscapes and peoples, both in respect to each other and within their own confines. I am from Cestium, right here above the Morgullian Desert. It's the largest continent and undoubtedly the most diverse in terms of both climates and cultures. In less than 2 months, one might walk from the towering tall pines of the Windwailers in the north, all the way to the scorching black sands of the Morgullian Desert in the south, which is where I grew up. The sage cities scattered all over the realm are sprawling artistic hubs with architecturally advanced boroughs of stone dwellings and temples encompassed by beautiful green gardens to keep the inspiration of their inhabitants flowing. A little to the east lies Archean, the continent of the Aiuo, the woodsfolk of the long forest. Archean is a bit smaller, with a climate very comparable to that of central Cestium, dry plains in the south and some pine woods in the north, but aside from the human cities on the western coast, you will find no stone cities there. Stepping into the living woods is like stepping into an age-long past, and yet the Aiuo have an understanding of memory, beauty, art and life that we humans can only aspire to. Even further to the east lies Avanima, the land of the dragons, and the monks who revere them. It's the smallest of the 6 continents, but no less diverse. Snow-capped fire mounts, muggy mangrove swamps, sprawling green valleys where cherry trees blossom white and pink in the shade of jagged peaks. And to the south lies the Pamao archipelago, tropical islands where the navigators perfected the art of sailing long before the humans of Cestium ever did. In the northeast of Tumiun lies Finicfil, the land that shields the world from the wrath of the storm eternal that rages endlessly in the far north of the world. Its rugged landscapes are covered in the remnants of an age when the Uzdar, the stone giants, still roamed the continent. The winters are dark and full of snow, but in summer the green fields are covered in wildflowers as far as the eye can see. Thousands of years ago, humans came there for the first time by ways we've now forgotten. They formed the 12 Northman clans, which still govern the fields and forests. Humans came again 1,000 years ago during the Great Exploration, and they started the Great Storm Houses, governing the cities of the second-come men. And deep below Finicfil, an entirely different world lies hidden, one of mushrooms and spores. The Moldbeards dwell there, a strange and alien people, shaped by an age of life underground. To the west of Finicfil lies Ambarna, the land of gold, which is almost as big as Cestium, and yet it is for the most part entirely empty. Or so say the Silaman that call this continent home. Outsiders are not permitted to venture beyond the borders of the 4 great city-states within the Silaman Empire.
All of the maps I've ever made of Ambarna are based on the maps and tales I've studied within the Golden Archive, the greatest library in the world.
Oh, wow. So you haven't actually seen a lot of it then?
No, not much.
I have seen the snow-capped peaks of the Auric Mountains in the far distance, hiding behind it the fabled Veiled Valley, a place where even the Silliman dare not go.
Looking out from the walls of the Golden City, I saw fields of green and purple, covered in lilac flowers, and thousands of soul wings fluttering in the breeze. But what most caught my eye was actually the lack of something, for the continent of Ambarna is almost entirely treeless.
How?
It's to do with the Shattering War, the longest, most terrible war Tumiun has ever seen.
Near the end of the war, the paranoid Emperor Onisius commanded the people to cut and burn down every single tree on the mainland of Ambarna,
for he was convinced that the Hirumai, their sworn enemies, used the powers of the Allfather, the first tree, to spy on the Silliman through the trees. What a lunatic. Well, he may have been right, actually. Oh, but let's save that for another time. Yeah, you're right. You were talking about the continents.
Indeed I was, and south of Ambarna, beyond the Broken Isles, lies the jungle continent in question, Zurak.
It is covered for the most part in a lush green jungle where the ruined temples of the Hirumai stand. The Forest of the Father was once home to thousands of Hirumai clans, but after the Shattering War they seemingly all disappeared into thin air, with only a few clans left to guard their ancient holy sites. But some speak of a great secret, a lost power or ancient technology hidden beneath the vines and roots. Something the Silliman coveted, perhaps, sparking their deadly rivalry, though none know for certain.
Fascinating. Now tell me again, what was the other part of the question?
Right. How connected are the continents and how much travel or migration is happening?
Of course. Well, it varies per continent. The western lands of Zurak and Ambarna are quite self-contained without much outside trade or travel, and they're both not part of the Eastern Alliance, which includes Cestiun, Archean, Vindicfil, and Avanima. Those last three continents all have one thing in common. Humans have migrated and settled there at some point in history. When Khan, the chronicler, flew from Avanima across the world on the back of his dragon and showed the people of Cestiun what the world beyond the seas looked like, an era known as the Great Exploration began. 1,000 years later we have sailed to every corner of Tumiun, settling only where none yet dwelled, as was the agreement of the Eastern Alliance. In return, Cestiun, the cradle of mankind, has become, well, a crossroads, a place where the peoples of the walled world can mingle their cultures and art. But still, you will find that most of the common folk have never left their homeland. The journey from Yrthilan to Wilberstead takes almost 2 weeks, granted you don't have a true artist on board who sinks the wind into your sails. But yes, there is travel, and I have done more of it than anyone I know. Yeah, no, wow, that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Thank you so much for your incredible answer. I don't think we could have asked for a better one. Are you ready to move on to the next one? Absolutely.
Perfect. Now, speaking of your many travels, Trackstaff wants to know, what was your most perilous journey in Tumiun?
A great question, and easy to answer.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't have to think about that one for very long.
Good.
It was quite a few years ago, but I will never forget my journey to the final frontier of Tumiun, to the insurmountable, all-encompassing walls of the world.
Ah, of course. Yeah, you'd mentioned you'd seen them in person.
Indeed, though I almost didn't make it. I sailed aboard a sturdy ship departing from the harbor of the Delver city Godrup, in the southern tip of Vindicfil, manned by a crew of the Order of Seekers, with the stairs of Hanchitanum as our destination.
Wait, sorry, the Order of Seekers?
Ah, yes, the Order of Seekers. They're a crazy bunch, striving to unravel the mysteries of the walls. They are comprised of everything from scholars and academics to thrill-seekers and simpletons. But their ships, the Unsinkables, are, well, almost unsinkable. Built by the most skilled shipwright sages, they are able to withstand the sinking seas like no other vessels can. But my journey was plagued by an unforeseen wall storm, with downblasts falling on our ship like a waterfall of wind.
Sorry to interrupt again, but downblasts?
No, ask away. Downblasts are a type of wind that only occurs near the walls, especially during these powerful wall storms, where air seems to fall from above like a weight trying to push ships down into the sea. It churns and whirls the waves, snapping masts and tearing sails, creating deadly conditions that have sunk 1,000 ships.
Jesus.
Who?
Never mind. Please continue. You were caught in a wall storm.
Yes, there we were at the mercy of the wind and rain, barely able to see 10 arms in front of us, drawing eerily close to the deadliest shores in the world. And that's when we saw it, a towering pillar of slick rock, black as night, jutting out from the sea right in front of our ship. Whoa. I'll never forget the way the crew was screaming orders at each other, and the feeling of the ship turning faster than my feet could handle. A sharp starboard turn narrowly avoided the rock, but the storms continued to tug at the sturdy sails of the Unsinkable. I think I must have spewed up a week's worth of food that night, but thankfully the wind slowly died down. The next morning the skies had cleared, and when I peeked out my head above deck, I was met with a sight I shall not forget as long as I live. Early morning had long passed, the sky was blue already, and yet the sun had not yet risen above the eastern horizon, for it was hidden behind towering walls, stretching from north to south, as far as my eyes could see. Mists hung around their feet, white clouds crowned their heads. As we drew closer, their heights steadily grew, and their snow-capped tips disappeared until their might covered the entire eastern sky. A titanic black cliff miles taller than any mountain in Tumiun, surrounding my entire world, and I was nearing their feet.
My God, how I'd like to see that someday.
Yes, well, who knows?
So you saw the stairs of Hanchitanung then?
I did, and I can honestly say that they did not disappoint. I didn't dare climb them, no more than a few steps at least. They were still slick and slippery from that night's rain. But I saw them winding out of sight beyond skyward horizons, a testament to the willpower of that legendary monk and his team of delvers. And even though they did not succeed in reaching the top of the walls, the stairs were one of the most inspiring works I have ever witnessed.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Thank you so much for sharing that unbelievable tale. I actually have another question about the walls right here. This one's from Connor. What are the oldest records of the walls of the world? And are there any rumors of a time before them?
A great question, Connor. Very interesting that you should ask. Well, most believe that the oldest records of the walls come from the Silumon of Ambarna, who could actually see the tips of the walls on the horizon from the western coasts of their land. When the conditions are clear, there are many places along the outer coasts of the outer continents where one can see their heads peeking out above the sea, like a faint blue line rippling in the warmth of the sun. So long before the Silumon ever set sail, there were already stories of them. Ancient tales from both Ambarna and Avanima talk of a great wave in the far distance, one that never seems to get any closer. But it frightened the people, because the outer coasts have actually been ravaged by giant waves many times in the past. These catastrophic tidal events, also known as dread waves, are believed to be caused by wall slides, where great portions of the walls suddenly break off and fall into the sea, sending a great shock through the water. So it took quite a while before anyone was brave enough to see what was out there. The first records of anyone seeing them up close do come from the Silm.
Sorry, the Silm? The Silumon, right?
Yes, Silm, short for Silumon.
Got it. Go ahead.
When they finally managed to build ships that could withstand the sinking seas, they tried with all their might to conquer the walls of the world, to live there, to understand them, and to climb them. But the so-called curse of the walls spat them out. When the Silm sailed to Sestion many thousands of years ago, when mankind was still in its infancy, they spread the stories of the edge of the world and its dangers. But when the Silm stopped visiting after the Shattering War ended, the tales fell into myth. Most of the people of Sestion barely believed they even existed until Khan the Chronicler drew a map of the world that he had seen on his far voyage. It gave Wilbur the Mariner the willpower he needed to finally conquer the rough seas that surround Sestion, and the rest is history.
Indeed it is. So no rumors of a time before the walls then, correct?
Well, not so fast.
Oh.
While there aren't necessarily any rumors of a time before the walls, the Silumon might not have been the first to know of them at all. There are strange stories from across the whole of Sestion, whispers of markings in lost tombs, ancient scratches on the walls of caves, symbols in texts we've long forgotten how to read. Coincidences probably, but they all seem to hint at some knowledge of the walls and how they encircle the world, long before the first ships ever sailed, or the first dragons ever flew. How these ancient humans would have known about them is a mystery few even know exists, but it has on occasion kept me up at night.
I don't like that. Like, at all. That doesn't seem right, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there's a good chance the historians just got their timelines wrong. But what if they don't?
Okay, let's just move on to the next question, please.
Sure. Let's do that.
Relay Based asks, What myth or legend many believe true do you think false?
Oh, a good one indeed. Well, speaking of the walls, some believe that there are beings or creatures watching over the walls, preventing us from uncovering its secrets. They believe that the curse of the walls is true, not a mere myth, and that it takes the shape of these figures. The seekers I journeyed with seemed to be convinced of their existence, even if they never saw them with their own eyes. They share tales and rumors of rumors, stories that speak of glowing green eyes watching explorers from the shadows of the walls, strange figures sabotaging their journey. But to me, they sounded more like ghost stories than real accounts. Having spent some time near the feet of the walls, I simply cannot imagine anything or anyone besides some shrubs or stray seagulls surviving there for longer than a few months. The constant wind and rain, the never-ending barrage of storms and falling rocks and salty air will have you begging for home within days.
Right. Got it.
Or do you know something I don't?
No, not at all. Let's move on to the next question.
Sure.
A happier one, shall we? What is the most... Sorry, InioBBX and Nebula Sparrow ask, what is the most exotic or surprising ethnic food you've ever eaten?
Well, let me think. Yes. I was once offered a piece of strange black candy by one of the few moldbeards I've had the pleasure of encountering in the depths of Phoenixville.
Sorry, can you just remind us a bit about who the moldbeards are?
Of course. So they are the Magruza who dwell deepest of all. Unlike the Delvers, their cousins who dwell closer to the surface, the moldbeards rarely see the sun. Most often they dwell in the dream depths, where I have not spent much time at all. But this kind woman was on a journey up to the mountain halls of the Delvers to deliver the T.A.L.E.S.O.F.T.U.M.I.U.N containing her father's soul to them, so that they might place it on their mountain tops to await the return of Uzdu.
Okay, you've lost me. Let's get back to the candy.
Yes, sorry, of course.
No worries.
After a short conversation in my broken attempt at her language, she offered me a piece of hard black candy, which I of course accepted. I ate some of it, but I couldn't really appreciate the strangely salty herbal taste. When I returned to the surface, I offered it to one of the Delvers, but they laughed and kindly refused. They told me it was zartak, or blacktack, a delicacy amongst the moldbeards. And one of its ingredients is the ammonia salt that condenses on the gold breath mold that grows in their noses, crystallizing from the toxic air inside their bat chambers.
Is that even edible?
Strangely enough, the salts themselves aren't toxic, but suffice it to say, I didn't eat any more of it.
Yeah, I get that.
It wasn't even all that bad.
Okay, man, whatever you say. Next question?
Let's do it.
Okay. Another one from Karina, a very relevant one. What are the strangest customs or traditions you've come across in Tumiun?
Well, making candy from nose crystals is definitely up there, but
I would hope so.
Let me think. One of the most heartbreaking customs I've witnessed happens right in the grand streets of Cestian, whenever a citizen crosses paths with one of the drained. As you know, the drained are those poor, hollowed-out artists who have emptied their soul pools entirely. They linger in the shadows of the high art markets, starving, but they don't beg for a copper of bread. They drag themselves along the cobblestones, begging for a poem or a happy memory. And the terrifying truth is, if you hear them pleading for a song and your mind involuntarily recalls a tune your mother used to sing, your soul pool naturally opens. The moment that spark of memory flashes in your head, the empty souls of the drained will instinctively latch onto the outflow and rip it right out of you. So, the people of Cestian, where the concentration of drained is unfortunately higher than anywhere else, have developed a grim defense. When a drained reaches out, you cannot feel pity. You cannot try to ignore them by daydreaming of happier things. You must actively force your mind into a state of absolute, uninspired grey. You fix your eyes firmly on the cobblestones, and you loudly recite a cold, undeniable, emotionless truth. Iron rusts, water flows down, stone is heavy. I once watched a hollowed-out woman weeping in the gutter, begging a passing merchant just to look into her eyes for a moment. And the man, terrified of losing his own memories, just pulled his collar up and whispered, "The sky's blue, the sky's blue," over and over again until he was safely down the street. It is a strangely absurd yet terrible thing to witness, watching good people have to actively kill their own empathy and imagination just to walk past a starving soul without losing a part of their own.
That might just be the saddest thing I've ever heard. Now, for the people who don't know, could you just briefly explain what art means in your world? Because it's a lot more intense than it is in my world, isn't it?
Yes, of course. Your art is what we would call low art. It requires skill, but the sacrifice is small. It spreads inspiration, but other than that, it is empty. In Tumiun, art is not merely an expression, it's an extraction. Every living thing, you, me, a tree, possesses a soul pool, a deep internal reservoir of their memories, emotions, knowledge, traumas. When a skilled enough artist creates what we call high art, or even true art, they aren't just using a memory for inspiration. They physically pull that memory out of their soul pool and forge it into the ink, the stone, or the melody. High art contains the memory, sharing it with all who observe the work, but true art can actually alter reality. A sword imbued with the trauma of a horrible fire burns with the fiery heat. A stone carved with every single memory of water the artist possessed lets out a trickle of cold, clean water. But the cost is absolute. Once that memory is poured into the art, it leaves the creator's mind forever. Traumatic memories are a different beast, far harder to get rid of. Emotions are plentiful and grow back with time. Factual knowledge can be replenished through study, but unique memories will be gone, forever locked into the work or performance. To be a great artist in my world is to literally trade away pieces of your own humanity, slowly and beautifully erasing your own history to shape reality. And if an artist doesn't know when to put the brush down, well, that is how you end up as one of the drained, with a masterpiece in your hands and absolutely nothing left in your head.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think that will provide some much needed context for viewers who aren't as familiar with your world yet. And if you want to learn more, I've got a video all about Tumiun's magic system, so check it out. Now, speaking of art, @Darby asks, what are your favorite songs of the Bards? Who is your favorite bard, and how did you meet?
So many to choose from. The Lay of the Six Kingdoms comes to mind, which tells the epic tale of how Session was divided into 6 kingdoms, how they rose to might, and inevitably fell into ruin. The song of Aiuo the Fair tells the story of a beautiful Aiuo woman who fell in love with a man of Sestion, and how their impossible love triumphed in the end. The Thunderer's song is a Northman classic, often accompanied by booming drums. But my favorite will always be the Chronicle of Khan. It's the longest song I know, and without a doubt the most famous story in Tumiun, for good reason. All of these songs and more can be found in my tome, by the way.
Oh, right, the Kickstarter campaign for the Cartographer's Tome of Tumiun launches March 31st, so check it out. Link is in the description. Thanks. Continue.
Of course. Now, my favorite bard, that would be a young man named Hirubold. He descended from the Dragashin, the silent monks of Avanima. True to his lineage, I never once saw him speak a word in casual conversation. But when he finally opened his mouth to perform, he didn't unleash the guttural, elemental roaring of the weather monks. He sang with a breathtakingly clear voice. I don't speak the Avaniman tongue, but his true art bypassed the need for any translation. He poured so much of his soul into the melody that the world simply shifted to match it. When he sang the Chronicle of Khan, I physically felt the wind on my face, soaring high above the clouds just as that legendary explorer once did. I visited all the lands of the world in the span of one song. Wow. And what made Hirubold a true master of his craft was how he fueled his art. He didn't sacrifice his own lived experiences. He forged artificial ones, one of the hardest things for any artist to accomplish. He would immerse himself in the stories until those fictions became deeply rooted, vivid memories in his own mind. Then he would pour those crafted daydreams into his music, completely giving them away with each performance and having to rebuild them from scratch through weeks of rigorous study and meditation.
Wow, amazing. I had no idea that was even possible.
It's a rare talent indeed. Most fictional memories are too vague to grasp firmly.
Incredible. Now, on the topic of bards and music, Stella Luna asks, what is your favorite instrument to play or to listen to?
What a fun question. Well, I do not play any instruments myself, at least not very well. But there is one instrument that resonates with me more than any other. Though I'm not sure if it's actually an instrument or not, for it is not played by a person. But they are called Windwailers, or Uyo in the Aiuo language. Some especially skilled tree shapers are able to sing trees into horn-like shapes over dozens of years, twisting onto itself in beautiful patterns. But they're not just a visual work of art. for these shapes catch the winds in ways that transform a soft breeze into a melodious song. Oh wow. I remember very vividly the first time I heard one, on the edges of the long forest. I thought I had strayed into a memory, and I swore I could hear in it a melody I had not heard since I was but a boy in my mother's arms. I later learned that some tree shapers pour more than just the ideas of shapes into the trees as they dance or sing to them, but also some of their dearest moments.
Beautiful. What I wouldn't give to spend even a single day in the long forest.
You'd never want to leave, I can tell you that.
I believe you. And speaking of the Aiuo, Selderic wonders, is or has there been any infighting among the Aiuo?
Another great question. Well, outright conflict, as men or delvers might know it, that is almost unheard of among the Aiuo of the Long Forest. They are a most pacifistic people. Their spiritual connection is so profound that to harm another Aiuo would be akin to harming one's own Io, the trees on their backs.
Right.
And besides that, the Aiuo are far less likely to take life for granted. They will avoid an untimely death at all costs, which isn't strange when you consider that some live to be thousands of years old. What a shame it would be to throw that all away over a conflict which may only last a few years. But while there hasn't been any infighting, they have had their fair share of disagreements, of course.
Such as?
Well, the Sundering Divide is the most notable of these, which only occurred because humans came to the continent. The War of the Western Wood is a tragic and often misunderstood moment in history, but it led to a large group of the Aiuo leaving Archean behind, the group that had decided to stand and fight against the humans. After the conflict was settled, they used the ships of the humans to sail west, starting a new growth in the heart of southern Cestian.
Right. Yeah, the Bright Forest it's called, right?
That's correct. It doesn't feel as ancient as the Long Forest, being only 1,000 years old, but for the people of Cestian who will never get to cross the sea, it's as close as they can get to seeing the living woods of Archean up close.
Amazing. Are you ready to move on to the next question?
Absolutely.
Great. Hims00 asks, out of all the peoples of Tumiun, which has the most visually interesting art?
That is not an easy question to answer, and a matter of taste, of course. The thing about art, in Tumiun at least, is that it's not only about visual interest, but also about the soul within a work. Of course, the intricate, almost unnaturally perfect gold work of the Silaman is breathtaking. The colorful mold walls of the Magruza are an almost otherworldly collaboration between the fungi of the deep and those who revere them. But to me, the most visually interesting art, the people whose works have hypnotized me the most, that might be the seafaring folk of the Pamau Islands. Their tattoos are unlike any inkwork you've ever seen, totally different from the Aiuo who use their body as an archive of a lifetime of memories, condensing the things they want to remember into mere lines or dots and figures, so that they can fit it all into their skin. But the Pamau Islanders, they sometimes cover their entire body in only one extremely powerful, extremely detailed memory.
Oh wow.
Their skin scribers work in patterns of stars and waves, lines and dots, primal patterns, simple shapes. But the most baffling thing happens when you watch the ink for a while, because the shapes seem to be moving, waves are crashing, sails are blowing, and the stars seem to twinkle. Looking upon these works, you feel an instant connection to the person in front of you, as if they are sharing their deepest secrets with you. Some of their leaders, the wayfinders, tattoo the memories of the stars above their islands onto their bodies, using their tattoos as a living map while sailing the seas south of Avanima. They are walking artworks, carrying a living reflection of their soul on the surface of their skin.
Incredible. Now, speaking of stars, Wolfswinkel asks, when you look up at the night sky, what do you think is out there?
Well, at night I see the great dark veil between us and the light beyond. The stars that shine are but tiny windows into the golden halls where dwell the ones who came before us, and those who shall come after us. In daytime, the golden gate of the sun shines its light upon our faces, containing the warmth of 1,000,000 souls, smiling down on us, ever blessing us with life and beauty.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So wait, you believe that the sun and stars are gateways to a different realm?
To the golden halls, yes. To the light beyond.
And that's where souls go after death?
When flames set free the soul after death, it goes where it wishes.
Right.
It may dance upon the wind or dive into the sea. But most souls find their way home, to the place where all souls come from. Basked in a light our living eyes cannot yet behold, but when our soul flies high, we shall finally see that place where all may enter. We join again with those we have lost, to feel their warmth for one last moment eternal. We pick a star from which we watch the world as it lies dreaming, and in time we may choose to travel the path back to Tumiun, as a warm ray of golden light, feeding the trees and the flowers, or we are born anew, embarking on yet another adventure. And so the great cycle goes ever on.
Whoa, so whenever you feel the sun in your skin, that's actually the warmth of wandering souls coming down into Tumiun?
Yes. Ever they smile down on us, as we smile up at them, our eyes shut but our hearts open.
Thank you for your answer.
You're so very welcome, my friend. Do you have any more of those amazing questions?
Oh, yeah, of course. This one is a little less wholesome, though. You already told us about your most perilous journey, but Paul Ridings asks, what is the most dangerous place in Tumiun? Is it the walls?
Well, that's a difficult question. There are almost no places in Tumiun where none dare go,
Right.
but many places where perhaps none should go. The sinking seas between the outer continents and the walls of the world have undoubtedly claimed the most lives. Even without wall storms, downblasts, or pirates, those seas are deadlier than any other, even the seas of pain surrounding Cestian. Whirling waters rage through an oceanic labyrinth of razor-like rocks, the teeth of the walls, tallest towers rising from the waves near the walls. Not all who make the journey actually end up setting foot on the scarce black beaches beside the walls, and of those few, many never return. The curse of the walls, whether it's real or not, is unrelenting, and yet they keep trying. We keep trying. I myself am guilty of the same affliction. The walls are like a bright flame, and we explorers are drawn to it like mindless moths. But we are not mindless. We know the dangers, and yet we try. Perhaps that is the greatest danger of all, the tenacious idiocy of mankind. But there are some who are not as frightened of the heights that surround us, but more so of the depths that lie beneath us. The deep weave is a dark place, not all that hard to reach if you know the petrifying paths below the spider's lake. But the problem lies in the fact that you're very much not alone down there, in that world-spanning maze of tunnels carved by Unalaki, the broodmother, the embodiment of fear and revulsion herself. Her spawn waged endless wars, contending over control of the central chamber. In the 8 outstretched tunnels, 8 different lineages of Unalaki's deep spawn rule over the darkness, and any explorers who venture down there are inevitably exterminated by the insect-like inhabitants of the deep. And others might argue that the Broken Isles are the most dangerous place in Tumiun. The shattered heart of Marathos is said to still be cursed by the dark arts unleashed during Kataklysmus. Whatever occurred there turned a green, prosperous land into a black hole that sucks in all inspiration, the largest and most powerful soul drain in the world.
A soul drain?
Yes, a place created by an artist becoming drained, robbing that location of any and all available inspiration. Drain works, artworks created by the drained, are empty and dull, bereft of love, filled only with the desire to retrieve their lost souls. Encountering a drained artist or witnessing their works can siphon your emotions, your most precious memories, your very soul. Their dwellings are often deep in nature, a hidden cabin or a cursed atelier, a place where they could focus entirely on their works. And even after the delirious artist is no longer around, the area surrounding the drain works will still trap the souls of any wanderers passing by. A once beautiful spot in nature has become a soul drain.
So, is that what happened with Mikorasa's tree?
Well, no, quite the opposite, actually.
Oh, okay.
Mikorasa's soul was far from empty when she created her cursed tree, and she did not pour her entire soul into it, only all of her fear, which is but one aspect of the soul. After this, she could no longer feel fear, but her tree was full of it. Seeing the Tree of Terrors inspires fear into the hearts of all, but at least it still inspires something. Therefore, it is not a drain work.
Got it.
But Kataklysmus, that was a drain work, the most powerful one in the history of Tumiun, and the Shattered Isles of Marathos became the largest soul drain in the world.
Oh, I actually have a question from the audience about Kataklysmus. Let's see if I can find it. Yes. Sands of Fantasy asks, how much do you know of the Cataclysm of Marathos, and what of the T.A.L.E.S.O.F.T.U.M.I.U.N and their Legion bred for war? Referring, of course, to your very first tale you shared on my channel, where you hinted at an army of powerful beings created by the T.A.L.E.S.O.F.T.U.M.I.U.N.
Yes, I suppose I should elaborate a bit. Kataklysmus, as it is called, is one of the darkest events in the history of my world. It occurred over 2,000 years before my birth, and yet tales of it still persist. Many have debated what exactly transpired, but it is a fact that it was the climax of the Shattering War, and the reason it is named that. The armies of the Silliman and the Hirumai met in the heart of an island that lay between their two continents. But during the battle, some unparalleled power was unleashed, shattering the island, quaking the entire world and sending a giant wave eastward. The ocean floor cracked and split, swallowing the islands of Feluvia whole. Now, the thing that not everyone knows, and even less people believe, is that the masters we all know and love, the divine artists who have somehow unlocked the door to life unending, are actually...
Cartographer? Cartographer, where are you?
Well, folks, I suppose that's it for today. I had a lot more questions for him, so I hope he returns someday. If you have more questions, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll add them to the list. Also, be sure to check out my Kickstarter. It's a world-building compendium I'm working on, and an art book rolled into one, containing basically everything I've made over the past 12 years. So if you like fantasy, if you like world-building, if you like Tumiun, be sure to check it out. It contains everything from illustrations to maps to sketches to lore, short stories, poems, songs, languages, whatever you can think of. It's in there. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.